listeners, welcome back to Newcastle Crew, or should I say Newcastle Crew 2.0, which is, of course, a Southgate Media Group podcast dedicated to all things John Constantine. I am Lilith, one of the old hosts, and joining me for the new edition is my longtime collaborator.
Hey now, everyone, it's Phil.
If you know anything about me, then you know that I love a good anti-hero, and I really feel like the character of John Constantine is an example of an anti-hero done right.
You just love those bad boys.
Yes, like, you know, he's a magician / wizard, but like, it's not like the stories usually don't revolve around that. Like, it reflects on his time when he took it more seriously than he should, and like all the things that kind of caused him pain, and you know, his journey from all that. So I think that that's what really makes him kind of a unique and different character.
Yeah, it's just, I think he's, you know, you get all the mystical, supernatural stuff, but he's still a very human character.
He's got a really interesting, like, supporting cast and a really interesting history that I can't wait to get into. So we're starting from the beginning. So right off the bat, we're going to obviously be talking about Swamp Thing, and then later on Zatanna and Dr. Fate, and also the Sandman, which will also bring us into Lucifer as well, because he's run into that as well. So, you know, we're just going to go through the pantheon of Vertigo, basically, while we talk about John Constantine. That is really exciting as well. What do you know about John Constantine?
Well, like I've told you before, I'm kind of a newer fan. I've really only dove into his whole story in, like, the last year or two. Well, I heard, you know, the first rumblings of the TV show, so I decided to give Hellblazer a shot. So I started reading Hellblazer in trade, and I think I've read the first 120, 130 issues so far as of this, you know, right now. And I got the new 52 series, which was, you know, okay, but it wasn't Hellblazer, yeah.
But this third reincarnation, John Constantine, the Hellblazer, is starting to shape up to feel more Vertigo-esque, I feel.
Yeah, I think they were trying to bridge that gap and trying to bring it make it similar to Hellblazer, you know, kind of bridge the gap between the previous two series.
Even as far as to bring Swamp Thing in the last issue 7 of that title, which we reviewed on World's Finest, so please feel free to go check that out. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of, like, just Vertigo in general, but I was a huge fan of Swamp Thing, and I started reading it, and that's how I discovered John Constantine. Of course, I was like, well, this came out in like 84, so it was like 2 years before I was born. So I was reading it like in the mid-90s. And I just found it, like, I like horror, I like the gothic kind of aesthetic, and so, you know, Vertigo is obviously that place to go, but really, Vertigo wouldn't exist if it wasn't for kind of Swamp Thing. He came out of another kind of horror series that DC had always tried their hand at as well, so I always find it really fascinating how everything's kind of connected and where things went from Swamp Thing, and what wouldn't have been if they didn't keep giving this poor title chance time and time again. It's been canceled like 5 times. But I think everybody knows Alan Moore really, really saved this comic and gave it its own personality and a stronger character, more character-driven title. And I really am so thankful to him for that. Because they took a chance. Like, first of all, he's British. Second of all, he's very unknown at the time. And they're like, well, we're going to cancel anyway. Let's give this guy a shot, is how that all came about. And he just kind of blew it out of the water. So, thank you, Alan Moore. So yeah, let's talk about Swamp Thing, because wow. And we start off Swamp Thing, issue 37 to 50. The arc where Constantine gets introduced is called American Gothic. But really, the story starts at issue 34 of Swamp Thing, The Rite of Spring. And this is really like a pivotal turning point in the story of Swamp Thing. He learns that he can regrow himself. He's reconnecting with his lady love after they had a big spat in 25. And which some people say is the first cameo of John Constantine. But I don't count it. I say issue 37 of Saga of the Swamp Thing is his official first appearance. Okay, let's just get that clear.
I never read that issue, but isn't it just like his face like appears on something or something like that?
It's like a blonde guy in a trench coat in the back.
Okay.
Like it's like a silhouette of a blonde man in the back. And people are just, but like no, because they kind of confirm it, but then they like go back and forth and waffle on it, kind of like that Damian Wayne thing back in the day about how his origin came about. So it goes kind of back and forth, like, well, it just depends on who you ask, when you ask, kind of thing.
No.
But for me, the full-fledged bona fide first appearance is definitely issue number 37 because he actually says something and he has a pivotal part to play. So that's kind of why I stand where.
That was just Sting. That was just Sting in that previous issue.
I definitely think so. So in case you guys don't know about Swamp Thing, he of course is a character that appears in DC Comics. He debuted back in like the 70s. But like, no, not even the 70s. Just like I said, he spun out of that one horror book anthology book that they kept trying to pitch. It's kind of really fascinating. And if you can find like the old stuff from the 70s, like horror 70s, really good stuff to pick up if you're into that. That's, like I said, that's my aesthetic. If you guys didn't know, the first series ran for like only 24 issues. So like I said, it's been canceled quite a bit, many times. He was created by Len Wein and who was his artist? I want to say it's Jerry Conway, but I know that's wrong. Anyway, you guys could look it up. But no, Swamp Thing is interesting, and like I said, that's where we come in, where Swamp Thing is going through a thing, this massive transformation in his history, and out of that comes John Constantine, and immediately he starts popping up in all these other little places, which we'll get to. I think the first thing that he does after this issue is one of the Crisis on Infinite Earth stories.
Yeah.
Which in and of itself is a hot mess, and I can't wait to talk about, actually.
Uh-huh.
But yeah. So that's where we are. Saga of the Swamp Thing, issue number 37. It is called Growth Patterns, and it basically plays out over the course of 15 days. And it's very interesting because we start with a little tiny seed and Abby eating lunch with a man named Tim. How random and innocuous is that, right?
Yeah.
The 5th day is when we meet John Constantine, and he's talking to a dude named Benjamin. And they are talking about something coming in a year or less. And there's this other chick that's freaking out and having nightmares. And it's just like, wait, what? What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
How did you like the structure of the story?
I thought it was interesting, just showing Swamp Thing in those, the initial stages of the first time he found out he could regrow himself a new body and stuff. And then, how it took so long this time. Something was bugging me about, I don't know, but the visual image of Constantine, and I was like, what is bugging me? I think it's just Constantine looks too clean, and, the tie's on a little...
The stubble's not there
yet. And the tie's a little too straight. Yeah.
Like I said, this is the beginning of his journey into, like, madness. So, it's okay. I think Cass started off the same way on Supernatural, which is kind of sort of loosely based on this character. Just shout out to the Supernatural fandom. What's up? Anyway, yeah, I totally love the structure. I think my favorite panel has to be when his lady love comes to see him and she's watering him and he's having all these thoughts and he's like, maybe she should be watering the soil and not me. And she's just in these short shorts and this red tank top and this black hat. It's just so like retro 70s. It's just really a fabulous kind of panel. I like it. It's like, that's the one thing about this whole series is that the panels are always very, very busy and intricate. Lots of dialogue. I
think my favorite has to be when Constantine's standing there talking to Swamp Thing, who's like only halfway grown out of the ground, and Constantine's basically like, "You want an instruction manual? What are you, stupid?" And it just says John Constantine to me.
I love how much drinking and drugs is in this book. By the way, just this issue alone. The one lady with the hella hair is just like. She's just on a bender, son, and it's just hilarious. Like, wait, they could get away with that in the 70s and 80s? That is amazing. This is something that always astounds me, that I always forget about this particular issue, is how much sex and drugs and stuff is in this one. I can't believe I was reading that at like 10.
Isn't that the tagline they put on the covers, though? It said sophisticated suspense or something.
Like that. Well, and it's really funny because this particular like arc of Swamp Thing happened during the big DC 50-year like celebration. Mm-hmm. And if you actually have the original run, it has a little stamp on it. And that's when they were really that's when everything started to kind of be edgy, was that mid-80s 50-year celebration. Like Batman got super gritty. Even Superman kind of got the spit curl straightened out a bit for a while. So yeah, this is what's really interesting. And it's funny, like, how they kind of reverted, like, stepped away from that, but Swamp Thing stayed really edgy. And it actually has a really weird environmental bent to it. And I don't know, maybe that's why it just got canceled so many times. People don't really want to hear that, but I think that's what drew me to it. So I like Swamp Thing. It's a really interesting story all the way through. The first original run and the mini series was really good too. But this one, I think that John Constantine and Swamp Thing, that antagonistic relationship they have, is just the best. Next to like Batman and Joker. And they're supposed to be, they're begrudgingly friendly to each other is the best way to describe it.
Buddy cop comedy.
Where the guy who's too old for this crap just never really warms up to the young punk. Just begrudgingly, you're here, fine. What do you have to say? Does it help?
You think they added Constantine just because they felt Swamp Thing needed like another human, more human contact, someone who wasn't Abby, who would agree with him most of the time? And
I think they did it to spice things up a bit and shake Swamp Thing's world up, definitely. I don't know, like, I think Alec is a really sympathetic character, but Swamp Thing can be very off-putting. If you didn't read the original run and you just like picked it up or whatever, I think that if you don't have that like backstory and things like that he comes off very cold and uncaring, and that's just kind of not the case. It's really a sad story. No, but I think that it was like a stroke of genius that they came up with Constantine. I think that Constantine could have been hit or miss in a lesser writer's hands. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So I'm just really thankful for the team that put this together. Like, they say that the idea for Constantine pretty much came out of like thin air. Like, there's this whole lore around the character of Constantine. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but like the people that have worked on the actual Constantine titles occasionally say that they've actually run into the characters themselves at like a pub. It's usually a pub, of course. And you guys should research that because it's actually pretty funny stories that happen. And I think that's probably what really like made me like draw into the character of Constantine coming out of a Swamp Thing, is that Alan Moore is just so great at like building his world and making you believe it. Like, this is one of the things that I really like about Swamp Thing too. Even though it's like a swamp creature, it's really realistic, and the character motivations and dialogue are very believable.
So basically, John Constantine, if you're real, come on the podcast.
We do have a real John Constantine. His name is Matt Ryan, and he is welcome anytime on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
The whole cast and crew of that TV show was really phenomenal and got a raw end of the deal, and hopefully that gets fixed pretty soon here. There's rumblings of a season 2 somewhere for Constantine, and if not, Constantine could possibly be on season 2 of Legends of Tomorrow. So, I don't think the character of John Constantine, played by Matt Ryan, is done by any chance. I definitely think that DC will be smart in that arena if they do Justice League Dark, and probably end up casting him.
I mean, even if like regular TV or even cable won't pick him up, it's like, come on, Netflix or somebody. I mean, imagine a Constantine series on Netflix where you can get a little darker.
Well, as the Marvel person on this podcast, you can thank the success of Daredevil and Jessica Jones for that actually not happening on Netflix anytime soon. But I say Amazon Prime, time for you to get in on the superhero game. I found the introduction of Constantine really fun, and as a fan, like I said, of Swamp Thing, it really reinvigorated the characters. Were just like the characters that Constantine brought in were just zany as hell, and I found myself laughing, like not at them but like with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add that you liked about this or didn't like? Or
there were times I looked at this and I was like, boy, this doesn't look like Constantine, but then he'd open his mouth and I'm like, there's John Constantine.
Well, originally they really, 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 really wanted him to look like Sting, and DC's like, hey, tone it down. We don't want to get sued over here. So that might be like where that, like I said, it's a first, it's a first appearance. Things are, need to congeal into place. So I can totally get where you're. But they definitely had his voice down path from the moment that they kind of had the conception of John Constantine. That's always been clear. Excellent issue. You guys should pick it up. And if if not just the issue, you guys need to pick up like the Saga, the Swamp Thing books 1 through 6 because they're really great. This is just a great item to have. They were on sale not too long ago on Amazon, actually. So you might be able to get a really good deal there because I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere outside of Barnes & Noble's like 5 years ago, honestly. Not even in like comic book stores in the hardback because that's what you need. Hardback.
They have the...
Don't settle for the paperback.
I was going to say, they have the paperback every so often. You'll see like a volume or two somewhere, but I've never seen anywhere. I don't think that had, even online, I don't think that's had all 6 volumes at the same time.
Yeah, like I said, a couple of years ago, I was in Barnes & Noble's and they had them, all of them, and I was just like, and it was hardback, and that's where I got it. I mean, it's easier to find digitally, honestly, and even that way, it's perfectly fine as long as you're not reading it in PDF. You really need to get like CD display or comic rack or something like that, because I don't know, it's just something about the flow of for this particular book is what I'm talking about. Just the flow was off for me, so I just ended up reading it in the comic reader. So just a warning of that. Anyway, what would you give this as a grade? Well,
let's see. We go on our scale of 5. I think it was a 4.
4 sapling seeds. Okay.
Yes.
I think it's a 3.5 actually. I don't know, like, because like I said, I read this not expecting John Constantine initially, and he felt like kind of an intrusion on the first read. I remember when I was younger, like, who the hell is this guy? What the hell does he think he's doing in my Swamp Thing book? So he took time for it to grow on me. By like the 3rd reread, I was just like, oh, John Constantine's fantastic. But yeah, like the story of Swamp Thing, like I just like Rites of Spring, like where it starts, like I said, is just like really good. And then it's just like this crazy interjection. And so like every time it kind of just throws me. That's all. But yeah, it's still a really good story. And I can't wait to keep discussing it. Oh, yes. Now we can get to shameless plugs and self-promotion. Our hashtag for this podcast, of course, is Newcastle Crew. But like, I want a secondary one because like usually last time it was like beer people tweeting me. And I'm like, no, sorry. This is for Constantine, the TV show. So our secondary hashtag is Constant1, and that's the one that I'll usually probably check on Twitter. So if you want to start a conversation, be sure to use that hashtag, and we will definitely get back to you. Other ways to get in contact with us, our email is newcastlecrew@gmail.com. And we are also on Facebook, Newcastle Crew Podcast. So look out for articles and updates about this podcast there. Like, share, comment, and you can even direct messages there. And we will get back to you because we love listeners. Phil, what about your shame?
Well, you can discuss anything DC or Marvel with me. NightwingPDP@gmail.com, and on Twitter I am @NightwingPDP.
If you guys like to live tweet DC TV stuff, you can find me either over at Channel 52 Pod or at Lilith Hellfire. That's pretty much all I want to pitch for this podcast.
I'm gonna say, did you mention our Twitter? We have Twitter too, at Newcastle Crew.
Yep. We do have Twitter, of course. You need Twitter. So yeah. Be sure to use our hashtag Constant1. Doesn't really matter how you use it, but it's kind of stylized. Constant with a capital C, 1 with a capital O. And maybe I will give somebody an issue if they know why I chose that. Well, we didn't really choose it. It was one of the two, and then we had a little poll, and it won by a very thin margin. But if you guys know why I threw that into the mix, you can get a free comic book. Send that into newcastlecrew@gmail.com. So I think that's it. We covered it pretty thoroughly, right, Phil?
Oh, yeah.
So this is Lilith
and Phil,
reminding you that if you're smoking cigarettes, it's a dangerous habit.